What's one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of your personal life? I was at a baseball game and went in the washroom. A guy was leaving one of the stalls and said, "Don't go in that one. People are such animals." I went in the next one over. And while I was doing my thing, somebody went in the other one and screamed, "Jesus Christ, what the duck?" I wrestled with the idea of looking but decided against it. And now I'll never know. On the night bus home after a night out, I struck up conversation with this guy. Turns out we had loads in common. Lived nearby and he was really cute. As we got to his stop I said something like, "Would it be creepy of me to ask for your number?" He burst out laughing and said he wanted to ask me, but didn't want to be that guy. So we swapped numbers. We went on a date after that and it's one of the best dates I've been on. We laughed from beginning to end. The following weekend there was a music festival that we were both going to. Death Cab for Cutie were playing at it and it was going to the first time seeing them live for both of us. So we agreed to meet up to watch Death Cab together. The morning of the festival, he messaged me saying he couldn't wait for Death Cab and he was looking forward to seeing me. We had a bit of a back and forth and agreed that I'd let him know once I got to the venue. I got to the stage where Death Cab were playing. Found an easily identifiable spot for him to find me and messaged him where I was. No response. About 10 minutes before they were due to go on, I gave him a call. No answer. About a week after I told my sister about it, she said he'd probably lost his phone and didn't have my number memorized. So I sent a final "Hey, it's Kakamilis, hope you enjoyed the weekend" kinda message. No response. I'd love to know what happened in the 2 hours between looking forward to seeing you and standing me up. When we did blood typing back in high school biology, mine was not an option given my parents' blood types. Mine has since been confirmed by Red Cross when donating. And my parents' types were from reliable sources. I'm either a freak of nature, got swapped at birth, or that wasn't my dad. When we were kids my sister and I had a big box of toy animals. We played with them every day and so knew every single toy in that box. One day my sister stood up from playing and underneath where she'd been sitting was a teeny tiny plastic elephant that we'd never seen before. The only explanation we could come up with at the time was that she had given birth to it there and then. I still can't think of a better one. Had a family friend whom I'd known forever. She had been a friend of my parents since over a decade before I was born. When I was in my late teens she dropped all contact with us for absolutely no reason I can discern. Parents don't know either. Her brother confirmed that she's still alive and in the country. She just doesn't want to talk to us anymore. My roommate was gone for the weekend, and I was sleeping in when his family somehow broke into our apartment. I always lock the door with a chain as the thing. So even if they had a key they shouldn't have been able to get in. But they did. His mom popped into my room, apologized, and then disappeared. When I got up later they were gone. But the door still had the chain locked on it. I have absolutely no clue how they got in. I know they were there and I didn't hallucinate the whole thing because they left some groceries for him. My only theory is they crawled in through the balcony. But it just seems so far-fetched. During a party I was throwing in 2014 one of my friends was hit in the head by an egg. She was standing in the backyard and an egg seemingly flew out of nowhere and cracked on her head. 4 years later, and no one has been able to venture a theory that does not require a wild stretch of imagination. What held my goldfish? My family and I were at dinner and when we arrived home my goldfish was in the middle of the room with a needle through him. Time to duck and move, bud. It happened 16 years ago. It terrified little me. I was about 10 years old and had a photo of myself with a horse in my wallet. I kept my wallet next to my bed. One day I went into my room and the photo of me was torn in 2 pieces laying on my pillow. I was a sweet and shy girl and that broke my heart. I never found out who did it or why. I still sometimes think about that moment. What happened to Sherry? Sherry was a friend of mine 20 odd years ago. She moved to another state to live with a man she met online. Back when this was a complete oddity. We stayed in touch for a few years. Then she dropped off the face of the earth. From what I can tell, no one has heard from her in about 15 years. My great-grandfather's father went out in the woods with some people near Pittsburgh one day. The others came back. He did not. I wish there were more details. But that's all that was ever said about it in my great so long past. Who my pen pal was as a kid. When I was about 8 years old, I started getting little notes in the mail every week or two. They were all stamped and addressed to me. And they all contained little doodles and said very random things such as "I like birthday cake. Do you?" Or "My favorite flowers are daisies. What are yours?" They were never signed and there was no return address. The handwriting didn't look like anyone in my family or any of my friends. And every person I asked denied it. Eventually my parents got visibly uncomfortable with it and would start insisting on examining the letters before I opened them. Pretty soon after that they stopped coming. But nearly 20 years and still no idea what was up with that. Serious answer, I'm adopted. I've always wanted to know who my dad is. Mom's name on birth certificate. No father listed. My parents hosted 2 small church potlucks at our house twice. A few years apart in 2 different places. Hundreds of miles apart with 2 entirely different groups of people. The first time, everyone left and the next day my mom discovered someone cut a perfect 1.5 by 1.5 square out of the middle of one of her shirts in her room. Few years later at the next event, someone cut a perfect square of similar size out of a sentimental baby bib that was kept at the bottom of a drawer in the kitchen with other special linens. No one knows who it could have possibly been. Both groups of people were fairly small and were close family friends. Edit, we eventually narrowed it down to 2 suspects. One for each event. We just stopped inviting them and if they did come, we locked the bedroom doors and kept an eye out. This will probably get lost now. But I started dating my best friend in university. He was my best friend for years. And we finally got together. He was infatuated for a long time before we got together. I think. A few months into our relationship I was in a serious road traffic accident. I had brain injury and suffered retrograde and anterograde amnesia, forgot the last 6 months and the following 3. Somewhere in there he dumped me. I never knew why. And my other friend had to remind me every day that he left me because I kept forgetting. But because I kept forgetting, I went stalker X on him because I thought we were still together. To this day, even though I'm blissfully married, I miss my best friend. I wish he knew that I wasn't stalking him. I just had no idea he dumped me. If you're here, Steph, I miss you, bud. TLDR. One night while moon gazing I was approached by an unidentified creature. Had a 15-minute standoff with it while pointing my gun at it and yelling. Couldn't tell what it was. Didn't want to shoot someone's dog or cow or anything. Eventually it elected to charge me and I fired 9 shots at about 8 feet. Called the game warden and him along with a few sheriffs showed up. Looked around to find the animal and make sure it wasn't suffering. Found 1 bullet in a fence post. Didn't find the other 8. Found tracks leading up to where I said the thing was. But they weren't clear. Game warden suspected a dog or coyote, but the tracks were larger than typical dog coyote tracks. There was no blood and no sign of where the animal went. So what the hell did I shoot? And what kind of animal survives 8.40 calorie shots to the face chest? When I was 6 years old I was the only witness to my mother's mare dare. It was a school day. But I was sick at watching cartoons. We had a cleaning lady at the house that day. My mother was upstairs sleeping when the doorbell rang. I instantly ran to the door to answer it as my mother came down. Standing outside was a man in a black suit with a briefcase and I shit you not a fedora. When mom came to the door, in a bathrobe and little else, he stated that he was a lawyer representing a family member and asked to step inside for something. I don't remember everything they talked about, being as young as I was. But I guess that matters little now. They stood around talking for about 5 minutes while I pestered them. I even remember offering the man a quarter I found in the couch. Soon after, the turn of conversation changed and the man pulled out a pistol and pointed it at my mother. She screamed and ducked to the side. With a shot firing, she bolted down the hallway and he gave chase. I heard several more gunshots as I was scooped up by the cleaning woman and hustled to my neighbor's house. She was screaming "Call 911" over and over as she burst into their home. As I stood behind their window, I saw a black sedan peel off down the street. The cleaning lady immediately left and, from what I am told, immediately took her child and left to Mexico. I was the only person to see the man, so I was visited by many officers in the following months during the investigation. They had lots of pictures of men and gave the whole "he may have grown a beard or changed his haircut" speech every time they would sit me down to try and identify him. But you know, I was 6. And to this day I'd really just like to get the story of why. Growing up, my bedroom was on the second floor of a 2-story farmhouse. I was big into Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels. I had a huge bucket of them and loved playing with them. At least once or twice, I inadvertently dropped a car down the heat vent. In an attempt to retrieve it, I traced the heat vent to the basement, where the duct turned 90 degrees and ran about 30 feet to the furnace. There was no access panel anywhere in that length of ductwork, so I was never able to retrieve my car. We moved out of that house when I was around 14 years old, back in the early 1990s. I still wonder whether they are still in that duct, and how I could possibly talk the current homeowners into somehow letting me cut my way into their ductwork to finally retrieve my beloved cars. The amount of wormholes I seem to open on a regular basis. Every pencil I've ever dropped is in some alternate universe now. I don't know who my grandfather is. The man who I have been calling, or rather, had been, as he passed away last year. Granddad all my life isn't a blood relative. It's never been an issue. Everyone in the family knows. And when he married my grandmother, he adopted her children. They too took on his surname. Alas, my grandmother also passed away a few years ago. So simply put, I will never know who my real grandfather is. But at the same time, it doesn't matter to me, blood or not. The man I called granddad for all my life is still and will always be my granddad. Where my childhood cat disappeared after for over a month. He was the neighborhood stray cat for a few months. Mom took pity on him when winter set in and he became our cat. He still enjoyed going out at night and got into quite a few adventures, I'm sure. One morning he showed up half tore to pieces. Vet said he probably ran into a badger or something. Either way, for 12 years he always came back every day. Then one day he just didn't. We looked for him for about a week, then assumed he had probably been hit by a car or some other outdoor animal accident had happened. Then one day about 6 weeks later he shows up howling at the door, all skin and bones. He had been a chunky cat, very rarely left my mom's side after that for the remaining 6 years of his life. Still wonder what happened to him that made him disappear. I bought a 2-pack of those doggy poop bag holders shaped like a bone for walks. I put one up for future use. Adopted a second dog and dug it out to clip to the leash. I laid it on the table so I wouldn't forget to do it and went to bed. Next morning it's gone. Package and all. I've torn my house upside down looking for the damn thing, but it's nowhere to be found. I was last to bed and first up, so nobody else could have moved it. Actually, just the other day my family and I were driving back from vacation and pulled off the road to enjoy the sights. My dad is looking around and gets a strange look on his face and calls us over. When we get there we see the back legs of a deer covered slightly in grass and a solitary hiking boot for an older child or small woman with a single flower in it. There were no other parts of the deer, and no sign of the other boot. I can't think of anything that can make that make sense. Why did my personal trainer block me on social media after we stopped training together? Considering the emotional intimacy we shared when training, I'm the only person with whom he's ever gone in depth about his experiences when he was deployed twice in Afghanistan, for example. Was it because it bothered him to get so close to me? And was this, as I strongly suspect, the reason he and his girlfriend broke up the week before he and I ceased training? I will probably never know, unfortunately. Edit, added a detail. 17-year-old me met a nice girl from PA in Ocean City. MD who taught me the art of cunnilingus on the beach. Eventually she led me to a random beach bar bathroom where we got busy. She said not to finish inside her because she thought she was ovulating. I had no idea what that meant at the time, since it was my second time doing the deed. I lasted all of 90 seconds and finished inside. Before we got down, she gave me her number, which turned out to be a number to a random Sheetz convenience store. To this day, I wonder, do I have a kid in PE? That kid would be in his 20s by now. I was out camping one time in southern France with my family. We're from the Netherlands. After setting up the tent, checking out the area and everything, my parents start cooking and I got some time off for myself. I was 15 or something, and just bought a new phone from my first job. I was sitting in my own secluded little area playing some Animal Crossing, when suddenly my phone rang. I pick up and hear nothing, just some breathing. So I'm like, hello? Who's this? And then I hear a small girl slightly sobbing, asking me, do you know where my mommy is? The kid couldn't have been older than 10. I got caught by surprise by that question, so I just answered back with what? Then the phone hung up and nothing else followed after that.